Welcome to the Association 4.0 podcast, your association's no fluff playbook to navigating and thriving in Industry 4.0 or the digital marketplace. Each week, we bring expert insights to help you and your association stay ahead of the curve.
Hello, my name is Sherry Budziak, and I'm the host of this week's podcast. I am here today with Geoffrey Brown. He is the CEO of the National Association of Professional Finance Advisors. I'm so excited to have you here, Jeff, to talk to us today. And I'm excited to hear about what you guys have done in your leadership during the pandemic and as we kind of navigate the future. So if you can you tell our audience a little bit about you and NAPFA?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Sherry. So NAPFA was founded in 1983 by a group of financial advisory professionals that just wanted to serve their clients in a more efficient and independent and objective fashion. So we've been around just under 40 years. I've been with the association, 8 of those 40.
Wow.
So pretty, not a lengthy tenure, but a little bit longer than I had expected when I took the job in 2013. I think anybody who's in a role like this has a shelf life. And I figured my shelf life would be 5 years, especially because I followed someone who had been with the organization for over 20. And so, typically I just assume it'll be a 5-year gig and, we'll do some good work. But here I am 8 years later. And the reason I stayed with the association, or I've been with them so long, is just because it's such a vibrant organization and a profession that isn't really what most people think it is. So they're all fee-only financial planners, which means that they are compensated solely by their clients. And you would expect, I think everybody's got this vision of what a financial advisor or financial planner does, but it's really a lot different. It's truly a helping profession. It's not just about your investments. It's about everything from, your retirement planning to your insurance needs, funding your child's education. So it's really broad, and I think it's emerging into one of the next great professions of the 21st century. We've got just over 4,000 members. We're growing, which is also a good thing and a good reason to stay in a job for sure. But it's a great community of professionals.
That's great. So I'm curious, how has the pandemic experience changed your thoughts about the future of the association industry?
It's really been shaped by the experience of our members during the pandemic. In most states, financial planning professionals were essential workers just because they fall in financial services, and they just didn't stop working. And a lot of them actually took on pro bono planning or engagements to help people in need, just because there was a lot of disruption for a lot of Americans when it came to their finances. And just seeing how our members responded, coming from a profession that isn't necessarily thought of as a helping profession, just showed me how, one, resilient and impactful the association industry can be, from everything from setting standards for safety measures to doing things like our members were doing to help Americans with their finances to, our medical professions. There's just a lot of opportunity for us to make impact at a societal level, but then also to make an impact at individual, professional, and business levels as well. The words that definitely come to mind for me are resiliency, nimbleness, future focused. I know there are a lot of groups that had a tough time over the last 20 months, if not all of us had a tough time the last 20 months, but I think it just points to the amount of opportunity that's on the horizon for the association sector.
Yeah, it's been I am able to kind of touch and hear stories from a lot of associations in my role, and it's been just amazing the things that the association industry has been able to do for certain professions, as well as just helping individuals over the last year. So it's been great. And for those that were able to kind of be agile and think about, what are the things that our members, really need. And it might not, and a lot of times it was out of the scope of what we traditionally did. So, so it's been great to watch and hear about. But so what do you think are kind of the opportunities for organizations?
I think there is, if there's anything that I've learned over the last year, there's definitely an opportunity on the member engagement and experience front. I think pre-pandemic, we said that was a major area of focus for us, but the last 20 months showed me that it really wasn't that much of a focus. It was like tangentially related to some other things that we were doing, but we made it our focus. And I think that allowed us to deepen the relationship with our audience. And so, I think any association that isn't thinking about engagement and experience in a really major way is missing something for the future. It's just a good way to make yourself indispensable in your audience's professional and business lives. And I think that's really what's going to allow you to thrive in a future environment, especially when they know that they have so many more opportunities. I mean, this is the first time that I've worked with a community of professionals where I'm competing with members who provide services to other members. I'm competing with for-profit sponsors that provide services to members. There's publishers that provide services to members. So the fact that we have the retention and engagement that we do just shows us that we're doing something right, and that we've inserted ourselves into our audience's professional lives in a really meaningful way. And I think every association needs to step back and take stock of that. I think the last year has also showed us that new delivery models, or delivery models that you would have considered kind of an alternative, are going to be the way of the future. Right now we're having a very significant conversation around how much in person is going to be the right level of in person. When you think about, the number of virtual learning sessions that we were able to deliver and the number of people that participated, the fact that our local experience went into either virtual or hybrid mode. And when you think about geographic areas like Chicago or Los Angeles or New York or Boston, where, the idea of traveling from, the suburbs to downtown is kind of daunting. Traveling across town can be daunting. So it's really about looking at all the lessons and new models that we took from the last year, and trying to decide what's going to stick and what's going to make us more nimble and flexible going into the future. And then you can't forget the importance of leveraging technology. I think some of the things that we were able to accomplish during the pandemic and up until right now are because of our investments and focus on technology. I think it's a double-edged sword for sure. But if you're not willing and able to make those investments in a really strategic fashion, then you're going to be missing the boat in the future.
So I guess, what do you feel are some of the challenges of getting there? I mean, I can probably guess what some of them are, because I think you mentioned some of them, opportunities and.
I think there's definitely some challenges around, the resources, both people and financial. I think that a lot of organizations are going to have to look at how they're structured from a people standpoint and really reevaluate, what their talent needs are going to be. I think that's going to be a major area of focus for us going into the future. The money aspect is certainly a challenge, especially if you were one of the organizations that just missed out on a huge revenue opportunity by not having any of the in-person experiences that would have been a part of your portfolio because of the pandemic. I know, yes, the market's done well. So if you were well capitalized from a reserve standpoint, you probably can make it through. But there's some groups out there that are probably going to have to delay some investments because, they missed out on a year or longer's worth of revenue. And that's kind of what hurts about the scenario that we're in now, where if you missed out on a meeting in the fall of 20, you were planning for one in fall of 21, and you might miss that one too. That's 2 full cycles where you're missing out on those revenue generating opportunities. So it's going to mean that a lot of organizations have to make some tough decisions. And then, technology. I think that's, the challenge there is that, what you invest in today is probably going to be different tomorrow. So making smart decisions about what kind of tech stack is really going to be the right thing for your internal business, but then also for your external audience, especially when you think about the fact that their experiences and demands are shaped by, their tech experiences, with companies that are much better funded than most associations.
Right. Yeah. Well, you touched on a few things. I was speaking with somebody earlier today about talent and the challenges with talent, and kind of starting to think a little bit out of, I guess, not traditionally about, what your staff looks like and how do you hire those experts. They were saying, they never heard the word fractional staffing before, and how they've been able to grow and then can actually then also, reduce staff using some kind of different models, I think that will be a challenge for organizations. And as you said, the technology, we saw organizations that had leveraged that technology and or looked at what do we have and how can we, either make it better or leverage it or really understand the tools that we need. But there's always challenges there. Technology always seems to be a
Oh yeah.
challenge, as we all know.
Oh yeah.
That's why I have a job.
Well, and I think the fractional aspect, outsourcing, I grew up professionally in the AMC world. So I've always been really, really comfortable with that idea.
Yeah.
And I think it's allowed us to make some really savvy resource decisions when it came to talent. Did we need a full-time in-house finance and accounting person, or could we outsource it and really get what we needed in terms of the right number of hours, the right composition? And so we've been doing this for quite some time. And it's even bled over into, marketing and communications for us. We didn't need a full-time digital communications specialist. We are about to hire a full-time digital communications specialist. But it's just about making sure that you understand where you can plug and play with those types of resources. And I think it can make almost any association much more competitive with your talent decisions. But then, I think it's going to go a little bit deeper. There's some functions that everybody just normally thinks of as being a part of an association staff team, but it's like, I feel like they need to be revisited and maybe morph a little bit just for where we are. I think having a full-time membership person, does that really make sense, where we are today? Is it more of a concierge type role? Is it more of a tech role where they're, kind of in the member database type scenario? So there's just so many opportunities to set your staff team up the way that you need to, and the way that's right for your organization and your audience.
Yeah, kind of rethinking that a little bit. So, Jeff, what do you feel is the most important thing leaders can do right now to position their organizations for success?
Wow. I think it's just really continuing to stay on top of the pulse of your audience, because that's really what's driving for us a lot of the decisions that we're making. Early on in the pandemic, actually, it was probably like late March, early April of 2020, we did some really intense scenario planning and looked out, not just over, a 6-month horizon or a 12-month horizon. We were looking out over 24 months, 36 months, just because we knew that the lasting effects of the pandemic, it wasn't going to just be a flash in the pan. And I'm glad that that's the approach that we took, because it's allowed us to really have some foundational elements to be able to respond to what's happening in the external environment. So, yes, last spring we were planning for an in-person event, but we had 2 virtual events already under our belt. So we were able to just, utilize those project plans to be able to execute what we needed to execute for this audience. We're planning for an in-person event. I said I wasn't going to talk about events. We're planning for an in-person event in October, which if we can't do it, we know that we can pull off, a virtual experience for our audience. So I think it's, having sound scenario plans done and able to be utilized for future occurrences, staying on top of the pulse of your audience, and then just, taking care of your people. Our staff teams have been through so much over the last 20 months. I mean, they're dealing with the effects of the pandemic in their personal lives. They're dealing with a lot of disruption professionally. We've asked them to work differently. And for a lot of people, that could just be very, very impactful. And we can't accomplish anything if we don't have the right people in the right place at the right time. And so that's one of the things that, I talked about with our volunteer leadership, was, okay, we're going to focus on member engagement and experience, because that's our bread and butter. That's what we're here for. But we can't forget the people that typically would have sat in this office and executed those programs, because they're going to be the ones that have been carrying those flags for so long. And we need to make sure that they're taken care of, that their health, their safety is paramount, because we're going to be nothing without them. So if you're not thinking about your people, you're missing an opportunity, because the job market is getting hot, and people are going to remember how you took care of them or didn't take care of them when they needed it most. And so that's just one of the things that's top of mind for me.
That's some great advice and thoughts there, Jeff. The one thing that I was thinking about as you were talking around this, taking care of people, I think that us being in this remote environment too, we don't see necessarily the stress or the tears that someone might have when they're like they can't take, they're stressed out at the office. So those little things and trying to be sensitive as to how many Zoom meetings have you been on, or did we schedule a lunch break, or, I think that impact of the go, and we had to do so much to kind of pivot in these new roles almost, we obviously we went to this, virtual meetings and education. Well, those skill sets were new for most people, and all of that over time, it wears on people. So I think that's great advice and something that needs to be pointed out for people to think about. So in terms of kind of business models, we're obviously everybody's kind of taken a step and looking at how do we do things differently, and talk about the association business model. I think even pre-pandemic associations, right? We were going to sessions to talk about, will the association business model change? And they were like, yeah, maybe it will, but we're still going to keep doing what we're doing. But I guess, what are your thoughts? Do you feel that, and I've heard people on both sides of the, of the debate around the association business model changing. I guess, what are your thoughts around that?
I think the association business model has been morphing, and it will continue to morph. I'm my 21st year, so I'm still a baby when it comes to, working in the association. At least I like to think so. But I feel like every year I've been in the field, there's been a conversation about how the business model is changing. And that's, been driven by external forces like the availability of technology, unforeseen competitors. So I feel like this is a constant conversation that needs to be had, and that we need to be able to act on. I don't think that every association audience is ready for that type of business model disruption. There are some groups that are still doing business the same way that they were doing it 50 years ago. And for them, that's just how their audience is set up, how their audience is ready to consume products and services. Yeah, there may be like some new tools, like we're going to have a webinar instead of always having to be face-to-face. And, for them, that's the extent of their ability or desire to take risks as an audience. And that's fine. But for those of us that are in fields where there is a lot of competition from natural competitors and unnatural competitors who are also supporters, if you're not thinking about how you're going to change your business model to be more competitive in the future, then you're probably not going to be having a conversation about your business model, 5 years from now or 10 years from now, because someone's going to, Uber you or DoorDash you,
right?
Just come in and completely disrupt your industry. We've seen it in some regards, and we've been able to navigate that by having some, establishing some really strong partnerships, showing where we have overlap and where we're complementary, that sort of thing. And I think associations need to do that as well. There's got to be a conversation and a high comfort level with the distinction between members and customers.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that, we've been coming to terms with for the last few years. Not everybody wants to be a member of this association. They don't need or want the local community. Maybe they just want some continuing education. Maybe they just want to hang out with you. Whatever it is, if there's something that you can offer them, then you should be okay with supplying it. But then, take care of your core audience. And so I think associations from a business perspective, need to be set up to do that. But, I think there's a shift happening. I think some of it's going to be accelerated by the effects of the pandemic. I'm definitely not consuming content, information, product, services from the associations that I belong to the same way I did back in February of 2020. And I'm okay with that. I know that when I'm ready to, I'll be able to dive back in and hang out with my people. We've got a great community here in Chicago, and I'm looking forward to that. But, I would assume and want, those associations to think about how they can do something different going forward. And And so I know it's a conversation that we're going to have. We're about to, from a NAPA perspective, we're about to embark on a long-term strategy development project. And, what we've been doing is looking back at, okay, where did we miss the boat, the last few times we've done this, or what would we want to do differently? And we're going to do those things because we know that, whatever happens, we're going to come out of this more competitive than we were, a year ago, 2 years ago. And it's just been really good to see how our volunteer leadership, the members of our staff team have, taken to this concept. I'm fortunate that most of our members are small business owners. And so they're always, looking for any type of challenge that, they can apply to their own professional lives. And this is really just the type of conversation that I think they're going to be really interested in. So the association business model is changing. It's always been changing. And I think, we just need to get comfortable with it, that we're not immune to, how every, sector has to kind of morph with the times. And so, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, for sure. So back to the conversation about technology. I guess, how is technology continuing to change how associations operate? I mean, obviously we saw that, there were opportunities with more virtual education and virtual meetings, and everybody pivoted as quickly as they could to that. I guess, how else do you think about, as we kind of look to the future, how technology will continue to change how we operate?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we're looking at tech from the standpoint of how can it make us more efficient? Most associations are like us. I mean, there's a lot more small staff associations than there are large associations. And that means that you're going to have constraints when it comes to people and dollars. And, you should be looking at technology as a tool that can help you address those challenges. So if there's a tech tool out there that can make the work of 10 people able to be done by 3, that's what you should be looking for. I mean, I think about virtual events, webinars, that's low hanging fruit. It's not transformational, it's kind of transactional. We're really looking for those tech tools where we can deploy some workflows or tools that are going to make it so, one person isn't spending, her time doing, a 15-step process. She's only doing 3 steps because the technology is helping to alleviate some of those other processes. It's easier said than done for sure. But I think that's how we should all be approaching our technology expenditures. The member experience is important. But when you think about the amount of time that members spend, utilizing your technology tools versus the amount of time that your staff spends with them.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, where are you going to deploy your resources? Because you think about, so I always think about how can someone have more time to have meaningful interactions with our audience, and technology is certainly a vehicle to make that happen. So that's kind of how we're approaching it. But, make the investments. There's a lot of great tools out there, but you have to do your homework. There's nothing worse than getting stuck with a bad product or a product that isn't right for you, because you didn't do your due diligence, or you didn't engage a partner or partners to help you navigate such a complex world, especially if you don't have internal IT resources. It can be very daunting. And I think a lot of us just figured out over the last 20 months that tech is here to stay. It's been here to stay. But it can be a huge difference maker, or it can end up with damaged relationships, an audience that's disgruntled. I was just happy that for the majority of the pandemic, our technology served us well. And so I just want to hope that we can carry that forward into the future.
Well, I think it's important to think about as you kind of talked about automation, right? Like, what are things that we can automate? What are the tools that we have? We actually, we probably have a similar kind of staff size, but we've, over the last year, we've grown as well. And we have all these tools. And I said, we're kind of our worst client ourselves, because we weren't taking the time to just take a step back and automate, right? We're like, okay, so let's just, we actually created an internal project ourselves, and we put a team together, like a consulting team, and we're like, these are all the steps, and what can we automate and what can we not automate to kind of streamline things as we're growing, right? So it is taking a step back and saying, okay, we're all busy, but how do we, how can we automate processes? What are the tools that we have, and how can we help ourselves here, right?
Well, and I think the pandemic definitely helped with adoption because people had a little excess time potentially because you weren't commuting. So we did bring some new tools online. I think people got comfortable with interacting with each other in a very different fashion. And so there was just a lot of willingness and openness to doing things differently. And I think that automation piece is so key. It's so key.
Yeah. So what do you think is the most important new or technology for associations? Do you got the magic bullet?
I do not have a magic bullet, but if you hear of one,
do my job button.
No, I mean, I think for us, these aren't new tools, but the things that we've rolled out internally have been huge difference makers. And I think this would be true for most associations because so much of what we do is either a repeatable process or it's iterative. How many ways can you plan a conference? Well, maybe like 1 or 2, 3, 4. So if you make that investment on the front end and utilize a tool like Asana or Basecamp or something, whatever is right for your team to outline what the steps are and tasks and deliverables and so on and so forth, that's going to pay dividends, into the future. It's going to, be a great asset if you have staff transitions. Because there's like history of how did we go through this. It allows people to collaborate, both internally and externally in a more efficient fashion. You don't necessarily have to have a meeting to run through, here are the 15 things that I had due today and I only did 13 of them. I can go and look at Asana and see, where you are in the process flow. So I think, tools like that are certainly, super beneficial. Everybody's going to need the right AMS. For their audience and the structure of their business. So, make the investment there. But then look for some of those, ancillary tools, like whether it's for project management, marketing automation. I can tell you we are about to implement an MA platform and our members couldn't be happier. Like they're excited to have the opportunity to choose. And we're probably a little late to the game on that one. But I'm really excited about that because it means that we can personalize some of our communications in a more meaningful way. We can allow people to opt out of the ones that they don't want or don't need. And so it's just going to make us a little bit more, a little better in how we communicate with people. And I think everybody will appreciate that because, the amount of email did not go down during the pandemic.
Right, exactly.
In fact, I think it went up.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, just little things like that. It's just like finding the right tech tools that are going to be a difference maker for your organization, your team, your audience. So it's really not about a magic bullet for me. It's just what's right for you that you don't already have or you have and you're not using in a meaningful way.
Yeah, that's great. So anything else that before I end for today, I know that you're really busy and I appreciate your time, but any last thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I mean, I would just, say thank you for having me on. I think any conversations about technology, digital experience, transformation, totally needed still. So just keep doing that. And, any association that's not thinking about these things and the opportunities that they can present for you in the future is probably missing something that's going to be a huge difference maker for them.
Well, great. Well, I really appreciate your time and thanks for sharing with our audience.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and discovered tips and information that will add value to your leadership style and your association. .org Source specializes in positioning teams for success with solutions for technology, strategy, and marketing. Please contact us at info@orgsource.com or visit www.orgsource.com to find out how to keep your organization on track to Association 4.0.